Hello and welcome to Drunk on Tea. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this model of Gandalf. To start off with, I've just sprayed in with black primer. First of all, I'm coming in with Mechanica Standard Grey. So for this I'm working on all of his outer robes. Just work your way around the model with nice thin coats of Mechanica Standard Grey. This is going to take a couple of coats to get good coverage, so make sure you work it into all of the recesses. Keep going until you build up a nice strong base colour of Mechanica's Standard Grey. Now with a couple of layers of Mechanica Standard Grey down, I have a nice solid base colour. Next I'm going to work on those inner robes of his. So I'm coming in with some Dawnstone here. Just work your way around these middle ones here. It will take a couple of coats to get a nice solid colour. Just work your way around the model, trying not to get any of this on your previous Mechanica Standard Grey layer. You also want to apply some Dawnstone here to the sleeves as well. We've got some of those inner ones sticking out from the outer robes. Just make sure you catch all of them. A couple of coats, get a nice solid colour. Now with those Dawnstone layers dry, the next thing I'm going to want to paint is his hat. So for this I'm going to come in with some Rust Grey. It's a very thin paint, so it is going to take a couple of layers to get good coverage here. Just work your way around the hat, a couple of layers of Rust Grey until you get a nice solid coat. So after 2 or 3 coats of Rust Grey, you've got a nice solid colour. So next we're going to paint his staff. So for this I'm just using Dryad bark. Make sure you work this into all of those recesses that are on the staff. Work your way around with a nice layer of Dryad bark all over his staff. There you go, that's the staff now painted. So next we're going to paint the skin. So for this I'm using Bugman's Glow and just catching all the skin here on his face. So obviously you've got the bit on the upper face and he's got a lip showing as well. And also catch the hands with Bugman's Glow as well. There, with the Bugman's Glow dry, now it's time to start painting the belts around his waist. So to start with, I'm painting this lower one here with Macragge Blue. So you've got the belt across the middle, and then I've painted a bit here coming down with Macragge Blue as well. Obviously it will take a couple of coats. Try and be neat now, you don't want to get any of this on any of the grey we've already painted. So after that one's painted, it's time to come in with some Mournfang Brown now and paint the other belt that's going around him. So take your time, be nice and neat, just paint all of this belt here around his sort of chest and leading down. There's also a strap near his shoulder that I've painted as well. So again, that's the belt or strapping on him painted. So next up is his beard. For this I'm using Celestra Grey. See, this is a very thin paint, so I'm going to give you great coverage. So it's going to take 2 or 3 coats to get a good solid colour on all of his hair and beard. Obviously be very careful with this, you don't want to get this on the skin we've already painted or any of his fabric. So just take your time, work your way around, make sure you catch all of his hair and beard. Just take a couple of coats and build up a nice solid white colour. There you go, now his hair and beard are painted. You see that's a nice coverage on there after just 2 or 3 coats. Next we're going to paint up his boots and the handle to his sword. So for this I'm using Corvus Black. As you can see there's only a little bit of boot showing out underneath his robes there. So you catch those two and just put a little bit of this in the middle of the sword just to work as a handle. And then after that, I'm just coming in with some lead belcher and just catching sort of the end of his sword here and the hilt of it as well. There's also 2 sort of buckles on his belts. I just catch them with a little line of lead belcher as well. There you go, that's all of our base colours down. So now we've just got a shade. So now I'll come in with some Reichland Flesh shade for the skin. Obviously this is the hands, the face, and if you can catch his bottom lip as well. And then for everything else, I'm coming in with Nuln oil. So obviously this is the cloaks, the hat, the staff. Everything else just gets a quick shade with Nuln oil. And there we go, with the shades now dry, it's time to start highlighting. To start off with, I'm going to highlight his dark cloak. So the first thing is to come back in with some Mechanica Standard Grey, nice and thinned. Going to want to work your way around the model, catching all of the raised areas where the shade hasn't settled. So wherever you can see that it's darkened from the shade, especially here on the back, you can see sort of a line of shade. Come in, paint the rest of it with Mechanica Standard Grey, leaving that shade in the recess, and then Mechanica Standard Grey again on the other side of it. Take your time, work your way around the model, just picking out all the bits where the shade hasn't settled as much, and bringing those back up with Mechanica Standard Grey. And so now after that, I'm coming in with a 50-50 mix of Mechanica Standard Grey and Dawnstone, and I'm painting this in the middle of those previous layers. So where I painted some Mechanica Standard Grey before, now coming in with this mix, nice and thin, plumping that in the middle. This is going to help start build up that gradient to the highlights that we want to get. There you go, so with those 2 stages done, you can start to see the transitions that are appearing on his cloak. So now I'm coming in with just some pure Dawnstone and placing that in the middle of those previous mixes we've just done. So now you'll get the nice gradient from the Nuln oil, Mechanica Standard Grey, 50-50 mix, and then Dawnstone. So this will really help with those transitions, make everything stand out, and help get you the colour gradients up to the lighter colours we want as a final highlight. So obviously this just goes in the middle of all the previous ones. sort of like a chunky highlight, kind of just slap bang in the middle, leaving a bit of the previous two colours showing through. Now with those done, you can see we really do have a nice transition building up on the cloak. So now it's just one final highlight to do on this outer cloak, coming in with some pure Administratum Grey now, and just doing an edge highlight. So all for this, you just catch those most raised areas, sort of here like edge of the cloak and the folds on the bottom, and all the most raised points on any of the other folds. So just work your way around the model, find the most pronounced areas, and just put a quick little line of Administratum Grey. And there you go, with the cloak nice and highlighted now, it looks really good and really stands out. So the next thing we're going to do is highlight the inner cloak. So I'm coming in with some Dawnstone again and placing this on the raised areas where the shade didn't settle before. Much like with the outer cloak, just work your way around, find where the shades didn't settle and plop some Dawnstone on there. Obviously make sure you highlight the sleeves as well at this stage. So also come through with some pure Dawnstone on those areas. And there we go, Dawnstone has been applied. Next I'm coming in with a 50-50 mix of Dawnstone and Administratum Grey and placing this once again in the middle of those previous highlight steps. So there you go, that's it now. It's got that 50-50 mix applied. So the next one is to come in with some pure Administratum Grey and place that in the middle of those previous highlight steps again. This really helps build up that transition and make the robe look really nice and interesting. And there you have it. Now there's just one more highlight step to do on this inner cloak, and that's just to come in with a little bit of Celestra Grey and do an edge highlight on the most raised details. And see, it's things here like these prominent folds to the cloak, just a little line of Celestra Grey down there, and any areas that you think would catch the light a bit more. Now that's the cloak fully highlighted. So now I'm just going to come in and highlight his staff. For this I'm just dry brushing on some Baneblade Brown. Be nice and careful with this, you don't want to get this over the cloak we've just highlighted. Just a quick little dry brush just to catch the most raised details. And then it's time to highlight the face. I'm coming in with some Cadian Flesh Tone and catching the most raised areas. So it's things like his nose, sort of around his cheeks here, and also sort of his fingers and the back of his hands. Basically leaving the Reichland flesh shade settled in the recesses. And once that Cadian flesh tone has been dried, you come in with a little bit of Kislev flesh and catch the most prominent details. So this is just the tip of his nose, this bottom lip, and kind of his fingertips and knuckles. Just the areas that are most pronounced, just give them a little spot of Kislev flesh. And there you go, with the skin highlighted, Gandalf's really starting to come together now. We've got to paint his eyes. So for this, I just come with a little bit of a Baden black, sink that into his eye sockets. And obviously be careful, you don't want to get this on the skin. So you just take a bit of pure Baden black, sink it into the recesses of his eye sockets. And then come in with a little bit of white scar and put a line in the middle of that Baden black. So be nice and gentle with this, just a small line of white scar. And I finish this off with another line of a Baden black in the middle vertically of that white scar. And there we go, that's now the face finished for Gandalf. So next it's time to highlight his hat. For this I'm coming in again with rust grey and catching this obviously on the areas where the Nuln Oil hasn't settled. So nice and thin, paint all the way around just to create a bit of tonal difference on his hat. And so there's that after the first highlight has been applied. And now all I'm going to do is do an edge highlight around the hat with a 70-30 mix of rust grey and administratum grey. So this is work your way around that brim to give it an edge highlight, and then a few details and folds around the top of the hat just to add some interest. So there you go, with the hat highlighted, we're getting into the final stages of painting Gandalf now. So next I'm going to highlight his boots and the hilt of the sword. So I'm doing this with Mechanica Standard Grey, just a little thin line just on the most exposed edges of them. So it's like a little curve just at the tip of his boots here and two vertical lines going down the side of his hilt. And then we're going to paint that blue sort of belt. So for this it's just an edge highlight with Calgar blue. Just catch the edges of the belt, work your way down it like an edge highlight. And then we're going to highlight the brown. So for that I'm using Scrag Brown. Once again, catching the edges at the side of the belt and just giving that an edge highlight. So the next step now is we're going to highlight the beard. So for this I'm coming in with a little bit of white scar, just taking your time and catching all of those strands of hair. Work your way slowly around the beard and his hair, catching each of the raised strands that are sculpted in, just giving them a thin line of white scar. And then once the beard and hair is highlighted, the only step left to do now is to highlight those little bits of silver. So for that, I'm just going to come in with a little bit of Stormhost silver and just catch here the edge of this sword hilt. And there it is, Gandalf the Grey painted up. I hope you enjoyed this video and have fun painting.